Grab a seat. It is great to be with you this morning. My name is Jonathan Lefler. I am one of the student pastors here. As you saw Brandon earlier, he's the other one. Thank you, Audrey. One person likes me. Thank goodness I've made it. All right. But no, I'm excited to be up here. Doing this is not very many opportunities, so I prepared a 75-minute message for you this morning. So I'm sorry the Methodists and all them will beat you to the buffet lines this morning. I apologize. Now, I speak to students, so no worries there, all right? But I forgot to apologize in the first service. One, I move a lot. Two, I speak super fast, so it may take you a minute to process what I said. It's just who I am and what I am, but I'm excited to be up here. But before we dive in this morning, and I have the microphone, and the worst thing they can do is mute me, but I can still talk loud, is this. If you could do me a huge favor this week. We leave for camp on Wednesday morning. Yes. I'm super pumped. I want it to come, but I don't want it to come because then it's going to be over. But we are putting on our own camp. We are doing everything. We're just using the facility up in Timberlake. But could you pray for our students? Man, I was talking to my buddy Matt, who's coming up to speak, and he has some incredible things for our students this week. And I'm excited to see them. But I just want you to pray for that, but I also want you to pray for this part too. When we come back and we get back on the bus, phones get turned back on because there's no cell phone service really. And reality starts to set in. And God can do amazing things at a camp, and that fire gets built up. But immediately the enemy knows when those students get back on the bus and reality starts setting in, he starts to extinguish that flame. Could you pray for our students when they're coming home? Can you pray for them that the fire that God has for them, the message that they have for him this week, will stay with them and that fire will kid? Because I'm going to tell you what, these students are amazing. Every single Wednesday night, they worship like nobody's business, man. It is incredible. We are blessed to have the students that we do. And so if you could do that for us, we're excited. If you still want to sponsor a student, that'd be awesome. We have a ton of new students who are going to camp for the first time, and they're in for a load of fun. All right? I'm excited. But we're kicking off a brand new series called Woke, all right? And the word woke has a lot of different feelings, emotions, and we've heard woke culture and all these things through this whole year, right? And we're still hearing about it. And so, Elizabeth, but we want to take this series for the next 6 weeks with 6 different voices talking about woke and what it looks like in our Christian life. And it's always a hard time when you got to start the series off because one, you set the tone and you don't want to make it be bad, then everybody's never going to come back. But two, you also want to kick it off so we're in the right thing. And so as I prayed for this message and just thought about everything, I believe we need to understand what woke culture is, but we also need to understand what it looks like to be woken up in our faith. Because we tend to move towards darkness. And that's a crazy, scary time of our life, isn't it? The things about the darkness that we come out are the things that we usually don't control because it just comes out, right? I remember when I took students to Young Life Camp many years ago now. Man, I'm getting old. But we were living in Wyoming, and so we took them from Wyoming to Minnesota to Young Life Camp. And I heard these middle school boys that I was being the room for them. That was their leader, and I love middle school boys. It's fun. They keep you on your toes. But they had planned to prank me, all right? And they thought that I was one of these adults who thinks they need a lot of sleep, all right? Little did they know that I run better off of less sleep than more sleep, all right? And so they had a plot to get me, and I heard them. So the first night, they tried to come up to my bed, and I heard them. So I pretended I was asleep. And I scared them more than they tried to scare me the first night. And they're like, this stinks. We're going to do it better. Second night, they got me a little bit off guard because we were a little bit more tired after doing things. But the third night, they came up with a better plan, all right? And when I will tell you this, when I'm with my students, I'm in protective mode, all right? Like I'm ready to attack somebody if they come after them, all right? And so I put that mode on, and here it is. I'm sleeping. And they say this, help, Jonathan, somebody has me. He's in the room. Help. And so I rip off the blanket, and my hand goes right here. As my hand goes, it hits the student right here in the jugular, all right? The phone drops. That's why there's no video of it. And it was the greatest victory of my life, all right? I felt bad for a split second, all right? There is some empathy in me, all right? Then I had to go tell his dad the next morning why his son had a big red mark here, and he said, well, he deserved it, obviously, all right? Note to you students, you try something, the wrath will come, all right? But no, it was a great time. But you think about that, right? The darkness And if we're half asleep a lot of times when we're asleep, right? We're kind of in this different days. We're in this different mode. And a lot of times, everything that goes on in our life, we tend to not be able to control it because we're half asleep. We're dazed. We're in something where. And that goes along with our Christian faith, doesn't it? Many times, we don't even realize what darkness that we're slipping into because it just comes over us and we're just going through the motions a lot of times. And we lose that faith sometimes just because we're so busy. That's where I want to go this morning is in this. Is we're going to look in Ephesians 5 where Paul talks about us walking in the light as children of God. One, because we are children of God. He calls us his own. But two, he loves us and he wants the best for us. And I believe we're all these different stages in our life right now. And I believe this message for you can be in different stages and wherever you are. Because here's where we are. Some of us don't even realize we've slipped in the dark. Maybe we don't even think about some of the things in that we start to do it. It starts to take over our life a little bit, right? Then there's some of us who are like what Comstock said last week with students. How far is too far, right? So we're going in the dark. How far can we go in the dark before it changes who we really are? Some of us didn't even realize we were walking in the dark because we didn't even know what darkness was because we're new to this Jesus thing, right? And some of us have just given up completely. We're done. The darkness has taken over us. We feel like there's no help, there's no nothing. But the reality is that that's not true. There is so much more that God has for us this morning. And I pray that God wakes us up this morning, and that's what he is. I look at the dark of what Paul explains about this. He says there's either dark or light, right? It's simple as that, isn't it? But also the other thing is this. I thought, well, let me explain in a little bit more terms that maybe I would understand besides dark and light. And I says, I have two personalities. I don't know about you, but here's the deal. One of my personalities is very sweet, nice, and kind and everything like that. But then there's another sketchy side of me that can come out. And I can't control what sass or sarcasm comes out of my mouth, all right? But that's when I'm usually hungry, right? Some of you can relate to that. Some of you can. But if you give me food, we're good, all right? I don't know. 11 o'clock, you might see a different side of me. I don't know. I'll do my best, all right? Because it's getting time to eat, isn't it? But as the reality is this, Paul talks about this very simply, and he explains it in Ephesians 5, 3 through 5, and he says this basically is what he says. Let there be no sexual immorality, impurity, or greed among you. Such sins have no place among God's people. Obscene stories, foolish talks, coarse jokes, these are not for you. Instead, let there be thankfulness to God. You can be sure that no immoral, impure, or greedy person will inherit the kingdom of Christ and of God. For a greedy person is an idolater, worshiping the things of this world. I don't know about you, but I can simply sit there in my life and I can say, yeah, I probably have done some of these things. Maybe I think, well, I haven't done a lot of the bad things, but like there's some things like foolish talk this week. There's a guy, I'm coming to work, and of course I'm late, so I'm in a hurry, right? And then now there's this guy walking down Stewart Mill Road directly in my lane, all right? As there's cars coming down the lane, I can't pass him. And as I'm screaming and yelling some nice choice words to him that I'll not share with you this morning and honking my horn, those are the simple things that come in our life, don't they? And those are the things that enter our life. And I'm not saying we're humans. Please be understanding that. No one's better than anybody else, right? We're human. We make mistakes. But the minute that we let just a little bit of darkness in, that's when it can also take over our life and control of what we are. Paul has a very extinct word for this, and it's in Ephesians 5, 13 through 14. He says this, but their evil intentions will be exposed when the light shines on them. For the light makes everything visible. This is why it is said, awake, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. Paul makes that a simple word, sleeper, because that's literally what it is sometimes in our life when we become unaware, we're drowsy, inactive, blind. Sometimes we just don't even realize it, but the word he's saying is that we are sleepers and that we need to awake from this sleep. Because he says this, it can be the most scariest time in our life. I think about the times that I was asleep or I was walking in the dark, and those are the times I regret the most of my spiritual life. Because I didn't know God and I didn't know this. And he's talking about the simple things. If you were to say, well, what is a sleeper? What is that? And he's saying back here in 3 through 5, he said the same exact thing. And he said, let there be no sexual immorality, impurity, or greed among you. Such sins have no place among God's people. Obscene stories, foolish talk, coarse jokes, all of those for you. Instead, let there be thankfulness to God. You can be sure that no immoral or pure or greedy person will inherit the kingdom of Christ and of God. For a greedy person is idolater, worshiping things of this world. Some of you are going, I'm not that person. I'm not that thing. That's fine, right? But let me break it down a little bit more in some of the terms that maybe some of us kind of can relate to a little bit more of what things actually control our life. Maybe some of us are more caught up in looking good than being good, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we need to look good, right? If we're going to tell people about Jesus, if we're going to be the people, we need to look halfway put together, right? It's just like the parents I tell junior high boys, do not send Axe body spray with your kid and tell them it's shower in a can, all right? They need to shower, all right? But the reality is this. A lot of times our looks will take over our identity. And the identity that we actually should be embracing is the masterpiece that God has created us to be, because there is no mistake, and he does not mess up on a masterpiece. But a lot of times we do worry about what people think about us, or what we look, or how we wear, or what we have the latest fashion becomes our identity, and we start moving into that darkness away from God. Maybe you are one of those people who gets on TikTok for 3 minutes like me, and then 45 minutes later, you're still on TikTok, right? Because you're watching it. Or you're picking out the best filter you can for your Snapchat streaks, or your IG, or for your adults, Facebook, all right? But here's the reality. A lot of that times that will take our time away from God, and we start moving back into a different darkness. Maybe we're so caught up in trying to make our students or our children the best that they can be, because that 1% is going to be the greatest NFL player to play this game, right? So we send them to every camp, right? Or we put every academic honors and all this pressure on our students to get good grades. Yes, grades are important and athletics are important, but a lot of times we start pushing that stuff forward and push the Bible behind. When reality is that we need to start pushing the Bible with those things. And don't get me wrong, I played athletics all the way through college, all right? So I'm a big fan of it. But some of us also have gotten used to this. The pandemic put us all in these little holes of being alone a lot more. A lot of us learned that it's better to be alone because the darkness can't be seen when we're around other people, right? We can hide that darkness. And when we're around people, a lot of times that real personality starts getting exposed. And we don't want people to think that we don't have it put together, that we aren't who we think we are. And we become vulnerable. We don't want to open up a lot of times because we're afraid of what people will actually think about us. Maybe your heart's been hardened so much because people have given up on you. Maybe everybody has let you down and you think God's going to be the same. Man, I've been there. Maybe you have just given up all hope because God didn't answer your prayer the way you wanted it answered. Because he answers it in our own time, and he answers it in his way. And a lot of times his way is not our way. Maybe you're chasing people or chasing things rather than chasing God. Maybe we get caught up in who's the who's of what we are and who we're hanging out with and all of that. We're chasing to be this person that we think we should be when actually God's created us to be somebody else. Maybe we're trying to keep up with that old slogan called keeping up with the Joneses, right? And you're buying everything left and right to keep up with your neighbor across the street because who's got the better boat, right? And maybe you've even gossiped about somebody behind their back because it made you feel better about who you are. Regardless of this, I think all of us have probably been in one of these situations in our life. And maybe we didn't even realize that we were moving to the darkness that we did. And maybe if we were to look back, or maybe you look right now, if you're in that spot and we start to see, yeah, I did start to change. I didn't do that. And you may be wondering, why do you think that? Well, here's how I know. I don't know how many of you have realized right now, but the lights have been getting dimmer and dimmer as I've been speaking. See, the darkness creeps up on us when we don't even expect it. If we were to turn the lights on full blast, you would see the difference of it. The darkness is around there. But the question is, do we even realize it's taking us out? Does it realize that it's even changing us? Because here's the real difference. See, just like the lights are slowly dimming, our relationship with God can slowly dim as well. And the reality is this, is that the things that we have been chasing are actually the things that actually kill us more than help us in our faith. That's where we're going tonight. The thing is this, it's a simple thing, and there's two reasons how we can get away from the darkness and to be woken up. The first thing is this, is we have to realize that, one, we are in the dark. A lot of times it's hard to admit we are in those situations because we don't want to think we are in those situations. We also don't want to have people know that we are in those situations, so we try to do it. We don't want that illuminated, but the answer is this. When you bring it out, Jesus can redeem you. Jesus can make it better. Jesus can take it away. He can change the dark into the light. But we have to be knowing that we are. Second step is this. We have to acknowledge it and we have to do something about it. Because here's the reality. Waking up is really hard to do sometimes, isn't it? It's so hard a lot of times for us to wake up and get out of that because that's where we didn't want to be. Paul talks about it in Ephesians 4:25-31. He says that this is the actions that we can take to be walking in the light rather than walking in the darkness. And he says this, so stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we are parts of the same body. And don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. If you are a thief, quit stealing. Instead, use your hands for good, hard work, and then give generously to others in need. Don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words can be an encouragement to those who hear them. And do not bring sorrow to God's Holy Spirit by the way you live. Remember, he has identified you as his own, guaranteeing that you will be saved on the day of redemption. So get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, slander, as well as those types of evil behavior. He makes a clear picture, and it's a simple picture if we really think about it. It's this: stop telling lies if you can tell the truth, right? Stop stealing, right? Simple things like this. Don't take others for granted, right? Don't tear people down with your words. See, the tongue is the most deadliest weapon, as James says, because we can either in one word kill somebody and destroy their life, or two, we have a chance to build them up and make them great. The last thing he says is get rid of bitterness, because all bitterness does is eat you up inside. I know that we all have harbored on some things of bitterness, and it's just killed us on the inside. All he says is get rid of it, because it's something as simple as this. Just like anger, it's a foothold of the devil. And the foothold of the devil is once he gets in there, he's going to keep going in there, and he's going to keep digging if you let him. Instead, we have to stop and not let him get any deeper than what he is. Because Paul makes simple reasoning why we can be from the dark to the light if we just do this simple thing. And he says this in Ephesians 1-2. He says, imitate God. Therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children, live a life filled with love, following this example of Christ. He loved us and offered himself as a sacrifice for us, a pleasing aroma to God. Simple thing, isn't it? Imitate God. Imitate the person who's perfect, right? It's just a simple thing, isn't it? But yet it's uncomfortable. It's not what the world tells us to do, right? The world tells us to be different than what we tell you in here. The world tells you that you need to believe in that culture than you do need to believe in God. The simple imitate is this: the minute that we're afraid we do something, all these hesitations come in our life. We start thinking, well, these aren't things that I can do because the world is going to just eat me up and spit me out. 3 lies that I think we let ourselves believe that the darkness can come over us is these. If I'm honest, I'll be hated. We're scared to be honest, aren't we? Can I tell you this? So I'm going to tell you this story because I really feel little kids are mean sometimes. You know that? Because they will tell you the exact truth or tell you something you don't want to hear, and they'll dig in deep and find that one spot in you that really gets you. I remember 2 summers ago when I was helping with VBS, I was right on time. I like to say I was probably like a minute or 2 late, which I hate and bothers me. But I said, sorry, I'm late. I just got a haircut. And this kid that I do not know from anybody, all right? And he's clear across from me. He says, well, your hair still looks stupid, all right? And if you know me, I became self-cautious the rest of the week now, right? And I went to the mirror and I'm like, I think it looks good, all right? Because that's one of my biggest fears in life is that I'm going to get a bad haircut, all right? But I've only had 1 or 2, and those were when I chose to do that, when I had a bowl cut in middle school and dyed it blonde and all these ugly hairstyles that my parents let me have for some reason. But I guess you got to learn, don't you? But the reality is this, is we're afraid that people will hate us. People will not want to be around us. People won't be there because we're so self-cautious, aren't we? And if we speak the truth, people aren't going to like us anymore. Isn't that the truth? But we're supposed to be imitators, and the imitator made it the perfect example for us on how we should communicate to people during these times. Because Jesus was hated by a lot of people, but yet the people that still hated him or didn't like him or didn't care for him as much still listened to him because he spoke with truth, but he gave grace. See, that grace word there is the word that we tend to forgive when we go tell somebody the truth, don't we? We want grace all the time, but yet it's hard for us to give grace to a lot of people, isn't it? We're so scared of this that we won't even call people out in the church because we're afraid that the church is going to start this rumor or that we're not going to be welcomed here anymore when we're speaking the truth. But if you want to become that jerk that nobody wants to, don't give grace, just speak truth, right? Then you won't have any friends. But the reality is this, just like we've been given grace, the world won't hate us if we're giving grace to them. Jesus made the prime example with the woman at the well. And he extended the invitation to her even though he knew the sin that she had been in. Second thing that we tend to believe in our life is this: if I control my anger, I'll get walked on. I'll be honest with you, I struggled with anger a lot in my life when I was younger. I would get blown up, I'd get mad. Even softball, someone would mess up and I'd just chew them out, right? And just as church league softball too, no less. That's how competitive I am. But my anger affected a lot of people, and I've learned this the hard way when I got benched, and I've never been benched in my life. That really hurt, but church softball too, no less. But I learned that anger is a secondary emotion, isn't it? If you think about that. When someone says a word to you, the first thing you feel is not anger, it's you feel hurt. When someone hits you, you feel hurt, right? When your student or your child messes up, the first thing we do as parents, we feel hurt. We feel sad. We feel these emotions, and we're going to feel these emotions because it's just a reality that we have. But Paul is clear about anger. He says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Because the reality is this, is you're going to feel these emotions. We are human, we're going to do it. The same emotions we feel is the same emotions our God felt when he came down in human form to show us how to live a life, right? He knows how it feels to be sad. He knows how it feels to be angry. He knows how it feels to be let down. He knows how it feels when people stab you in the back or accuse you of something you didn't even do. But where the darkness comes into that part is what you do with emotion. Because emotion is eternal and not directed at people, but the action can have good consequences or bad consequences. It can make you from the light to the dark in a simple thing that's quickly. That's the reality that we're facing. And the third thing is this: if I'm selfless and hardworking, someone will take advantage of me. I think that's one of our biggest things that we struggle in our culture is selfish, right? It tells us everything, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big Apple person, but if you think about Apple products, an iPhone, an iWatch, iPad, iMac, it's I. Our culture tends us to get us to believe that it's all about us, and that the only thing we're going to do is what are we going to get out of it, right? I've been guilty of that, especially in ministry many times, where someone says, well, can you help me? But what am I going to get out of this, you know? We all have those emotions. We all have those different things because the reality is our culture makes us feel that way. I struggle with selflessness every single day because I always think I got more important things to do than I do a lot of times to helping other people. I get what I like to call tunnel vision. I'm focused on what I need to get done that I miss what's going on around me, of where I can help somebody or what I can do or how we can change a life. And we're afraid that we're going to get walked on. And yes, of course, people are going to walk on us. People are going to take advantage of us. That's just what they got to deal with themselves. But we have to know that we're doing this for only one purpose, and that's for him. But we let that mindset get in us. We let that darkness come in because it says that I'm afraid that people are just going to walk all over me. That if I get angry, no one's going to not care because I'm not angry about what's going on in the culture that we're in today, if I don't feel the same way. We're afraid that all those three things, and those are just some of them, I'm sure you could come up with a lot more, that have impacted our life as lies that we let control who we are. That's the thing about this. We say this, well, you don't understand the darkness I've been in, Jonathan. You're up there as the preacher boy, saying all these things. It's easy for you because this is the position you're in. Can I tell you that's not true? For 22 years, I walked in darkness. I walked in some pitiful spots. It took me, though, to finally wake up to the light when I couldn't control my life anymore. When somebody else was about to control the rest of my life, was it going to be a long time or a short time? That's when I had to know that I had no longer be able to control it. And the darkness that I had been in had taken advantage of me, and I would let it just sink in more and more and more. Because I forgot that this verse is important in 1 Corinthians 10:13. It says this, God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. When you are tempted, he will always provide a way out so you can endure it. Do you understand that? He doesn't give us as much as we think he does. God's not up there saying, I'm going to just keep pouring it on and laughing at us, right? No. He gives us what we know we can handle, but the choice is ours. Do we handle it, or do we let it consume our life? And do we keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper? And then he says this, he's faithful. He always finds a way out for you. And you know what that way is? You calling on him. He's sitting there with his arm just waiting for us, and yet we keep sinking and sinking and sinking. It reminds me of Peter on the water. When he took his eyes and he focused off of Jesus, he began to sink. But Jesus pulled out his hand, and he grabbed Jesus' hand, and he pulled him out. He's sitting there waiting for us to be woken into the light, but yet we're choosing to continue to walk in the darkness because it's so much easier to fall into that. We need to be more like moths, all right? Or millers, as they call them in Wyoming. Because if you think about a moth, they go towards the light, don't they? They never go towards the darkness. What would it look like for us to be woke in our culture and to be Christian moths, that the minute we see light, that we start going straight to that, and we forget about the darkness of what it had? It's a simple thing, isn't it? But yet it's also the hardest thing. And I'm not going to tell you it's not. It's a very hard road a lot of times to get ourselves out of a lot of things. And I always tell students this, the minute we always walk out of these magical door frames of the church, the reality starts setting in, and that darkness starts coming over us. But what we do with that darkness and how we get rid of that darkness is only our choice. And that's what God is saying, is our action that gets us out. He provides a way, but we have to do it. God's not just going to do it. We have to do it, because the reality is sin does cost us. But Jesus is bigger than our sin. So this morning he's saying this. What would it look like for us to be woke up in this world? What would it look like for us to get out of this dark hole and start being lights in this entire world? Because the minute that we go out there, we tend to get swallowed. But what would it look like if our light shined brighter than the darkness? What would it look like for us to be different than the world out there? It's a simple thing, isn't it? But yet it's also the hardest thing. Because our selfishness and our sin comes into our life, and we let it control it more than we do with the light. But the simple thing that he says in 1 John 1:8, he says this, if we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. It's simple there. The only thing is we just choose not to do it. He takes it so far away, our sins, our darkness, if we just give it to him. But yet we still want to carry that baggage with us no matter what, and we want to look like fools because all we have to do is give it to him, and he will take it and throw it far away. And the only person that will ever remind you of it is yourself, if you let yourself do it. Because that's one foothold the devil gets right in your life. So this morning, we have opportunities to be woken up. We have opportunities not to be woken up. It's our choice. I always tell students this, we will set you up to succeed, but you have to be the ultimate person to take it. That's the way I was. I heard these words, I heard all these things, yet I didn't take it and apply it to my life. Until that day came where I had to fully surrender to God and say, I can't do this on my own again. My hope and my prayer for you this morning is that you don't fall into that deep of darkness. And if you are, let me tell you this. There's a hand being extended to you to pull you out of it. You just have to ask. And I challenge you, if that's you, get out of that. It's not a life you want to be in. It's a life that's, because when I said that to God, I will do anything, and I figured he'd send me to the worst place in the world of like Brazil with all these huge snakes that I hate, and they'd swallow my head. But instead, he said, I'm going to put you in student ministry. This has been the best ride of my life, 15 years. Because I was willing to move out of the darkness and into the light, to be woken up for him to use me in big ways. One of the things students tell me all the time is this: God can't use me, I can't do these things. Just let him. Because there's a handle up there in your car, right? And he's got a few words for it, I won't say it. Because when you tell God that I'm ready to be woken up into the light and I'm ready to go, grab that handle, because it's going to be the best ride of your life, and you're going to be hanging on because God is going to do more in your life than you could ever dream that he could do. But we have to be woken first. We have to move out of that. This morning, there's an altar up here this morning, and as we sing this song, there'll be prayer people up here, prayer warriors. If you're in that darkness and you need to get out of it, and you're ready to admit that and you're ready to do it, just come up here. You don't have to talk to these people, but if you want to, they'll listen to you. But they'll just put a hand on you and start praying for you. And if it goes longer than the service goes, we'll stay up here until you are done giving this to God. Maybe you're in the life where you just haven't really seen where the darkness is, and you're going to ask God, God, show me where those dark areas in my life are. I'm ready to be woken for you. Maybe you are just saying now, I've acknowledged that I am God. Use me in ways that I never dreamed that I could be used. Just come up here and just pray that this morning. Maybe you've got something else going on in your life. Maybe there's other burdens or different things you're struggling with. This is a place where you can come. And these people God has put here for a reason, to pray over you. They're prayer warriors. I encourage you this morning, do not leave this morning without taking care of business with God, because we don't even know what may happen after we leave these doors. Get right with God. Church, let's get woken for Jesus. Let's woke this world up and show them the love and the light that can shine through the darkness. God, thank you for this morning. Just thank you for these words. Thank you for your message, God. Thank you, God, that you never leave us, that you're always there for us. Even as much darkness as we fall into and things we go into, God, you're still waiting there for us with your hand out to ready to grab us and pull us out, God. Lord, I pray whatever's going on in our lives right now, God, that we will just put it off to the side, God, that we will throw it away, that we will give it to you right now, God, that we won't leave this place without dealing with our business with you, God. Lord, thank you that you are there for us. Thank you that you give us examples of ways to be lights, God. Take all the hesitations out of our life, God, and just let us be woke for you this morning, God. Let us change this world in different things the way we can, God. Lord, use us in ways that we never dreamed that we could be using, God, because you say this: if you have faith like as small as a mustard seed, you can do anything. You can move even a mountain, God. Lord, thank you for those promises. Thank you for those truths, God. Lord, thank you for who you are. God, we can never give back to you as much as you've given to us, God. But God, now as we move into worship, God, we just praise you and thank you for who you are, God. We love you.